I can teach the group of students to do it in late July. I can teach them to do it in August. I can teach them to do it in September and so on. I can keep cueing them. Will they necessarily carry those things into a NAPLAN test? Will they? No, not necessarily at all. They'll only do it when I cue them to do it. So there are two aspects of our high reliability teaching. I need the children to learn the actions. I need them to learn the actions of getting knowledge ready. But I also need to have them learning to do it independently. And in our discussion this morning, we're going to look at the conditions for both. We need to have both in there. This is where the explicitness comes in. When the child can do it automatically, what will it look like? Come on, if we're talking about the children being able to do some of these things automatically, how will they be displaying it? Go on. They'll be able to explain it without me telling them, number one. Number two, when I ask the class, what will you do? If they can say, I'll do this and this, and if they can say, and I'll get this as an outcome, I'll tell myself to make a picture, and what I'll have in my head is a set of images, I'm more convinced that they're doing it independently than not. So there are things I can look for in student behaviours that will tell me how independently the children are using them. It's getting the children to do it independently that I'm focusing on 2 per term. Helen, go on.
I'm just thinking about when it's automated in children's head and their behaviour's already there. They tend not to be able to articulate it because it is automated.
Yeah, I want to keep the articulation going as well.
I understand that, but sometimes it can be, if they've learned it, it may not be the focus of what you need to be talked about.
Yep, and Helen's right. Often when you automatise things, it's hard to say what it is that you're doing. But that's only if you've learnt the action without linking language with it. See, there are also things that you do automatically, and I'd say, how do you do it? And you'd say, oh, this isn't this. So I hope we're not teaching the kids to do them habitually sort of thing. We're wanting to do it thoughtfully. If the children can explicitly say what they're doing and then tell me what they'll get as an outcome, and I see the result of it, I'll believe they've automatised. So when you now are auditing where you're up to, you need to say, have you taught the children, have you scaffolded them, number one? And secondly, have you built into your teaching automatising? And we're going to look at what that will look like. You can see where you're up to. So we need data on both. Is that okay? It's not enough to give kids tests and say, hey, they can read this. We need to know under what conditions.
One of the things I found last year with the great classes in primary school was having a discussion with them about why they would be using any of this RLR strategies so that they had the individuals a reason for doing it, the purpose for doing it, and that really helped with the
Yep, that's beautiful, that's great.
And that really wasn't a huge in-depth discussion, but it did require one-on-one, so that when you're working with the reading groups, you really went into and got them to tell you, this is the strategy I'm going to teach you, what use is it to you, how do you think you can use it, and I found that the kids really came up with, they really owned it a lot more because there was that discussion where they were coming up with the reasons of why they would be using it, when they would use it, so much so that it was just kind of happening in a really, and I haven't, just you talking now, I haven't actually had that discussion with the group of kids I've got this year, and I think that's why they're not using it as much.
Right. But that's, look, I can't remember your first name, sorry. Sorry?
Linda,
Linda, of course. No, Linda's bringing up, that's a fantastic point. Because it's to do with the kids seeing that it can work for them. Well, that's what you're saying, Linda. You had the kids see that this could work for them. Why am I using it? When will I use it? If we were going to have a discussion about cognitive psychology, what we're talking about now is the difference between being a novice knower of a topic and an expert knower. And that's a really important distinction in cognitive psychology. And for someone to go from being a novice to an expert, their knowledge, as Helen was saying, changes. Your knowledge goes from when it's actually represented in your brain in different ways. If you know someone as something in a novice way, then you know how you grope your way through it and you know bits and pieces of it. But when you're an expert, you glide across bits. You link things. You can say, hey, I'll do that, but I won't because whatever. And, you know, it's actually neurologically, they're represented in different parts of the brain. Now, what Linda was doing was actually moving the children from being novices to experts. And of course you can do that. If you start to see, because what Linda's doing is helping them link up ideas. I'll use it then. I'll use it there. I'll be able to see. I wouldn't use it in that situation. And being able to see that it works for you is the added emotional bit. The emotional bit that we have to all of our knowledge. So we're actually going to, you'll actually see where I've put this into the automatizing, the independent learning sequence in a moment. But that's great. It's a really great point. So if we're wanting to move the students from the scaffolding where they're still dependent on me, and this is better than nothing, I'll tell you, this is the start, to here, we need to do the sort of things that Linda said. And also one of the things that Linda said was there was a small group discussion. We can do this with a big group, but we can also do it with a small group. And often moving it along lines. What we're wanting to do is to move the children from being novice users of the strategies to expert users. Okay, I was going to get you to, for us to stop there and have a go at doing that audit. Will we just do that for a minute? How about if you do just go through and just look at it and see where you're up to? In terms of looking at where you're up to with the strategies, that sheet or that table should actually help you see you know, where you are at this point in terms of implementing the strategies. And we'll go on to the next part after morning tea. But what we're going to look at, and you can see from the next question, is what have the students learnt? So what data do you have about what the students have learnt? Because we know that teaching doesn't necessarily equal learning. And there are a few issues that we need to pursue that flow out directly from the discussion so far. How are we going to tell the level of automaticity? How are we going to know how automatized children have the strategies going? We've got to be clear on how we're going to get that. We also need to be clear on the difference between outcomes and the processes to get the outcomes.